started with a SCI work camp in 2017, which was my first contact with climate activism, with different initiatives. So yeah, I think I'm very grateful this network for bringing me to the later things I did. By chance, I ended up going to the climate conference 2021 in Glasgow, which was an encounter with formal policy, with policy making. It was very frustrating in a way, but also very inspiring to be part of the so-called YOUNGO network, which is the youth. It's a representation of different NGOs and groups who go to the UN negotiations and try to influence it there. Yeah, I was expecting to have kind of different people here, so I always kind of also linked of like, how could you get active? Because I didn't stay active there, but I got kind of active for a while, so I can share how to get into that. There is a link tree that I share in the end of different YOUNGO working groups. There's something on kind of every topic that you can get active in, so you can easily reach out. And they're also active during the whole year, not only during the climate conferences, but they basically meet online and try to influence policy. There's great webinars and yeah, organizing there, and very kind of represented also with a lot of Global South activists who lead the different working groups. Then almost at the same time, I think also my first camp was in 2021, I started to attend climate camps. And this link that I also share in the chat now is a beautiful list of, especially for European-based activists, to find where's the next camp and climate activism happening around. And yeah, on the left side, so you see kind of how people construct such a camp. On the right, it's a picture of Lützerath, this place next to a coal mine in Western Germany, which unfortunately was completely demolished last January. But there it was a place where one of these climate camps took place. And then since then in Germany they take place, but also in other countries you can find, I think one also in Italy, I guess, upcoming, and one in the UK that just passed, and one in the Netherlands where I participated this weekend. So it's a good thing to plan your summer around if you want to get involved in these camps. And there were, like, for me, it's a way of kind of getting into this utopia of how could a different society look like, because yeah, there at the camp it's very self-organized and you live this. Another type of activism I did is organizing a parking day. I'm not sure if you heard about the concept, but you basically, on one day in September, it's actually upcoming, I think it's Friday next week on the 20th, which also the global climate strike. There is a day where parking spaces in the city are transformed into livable places, and places that belong to the people, not the cars. And I started with, on the left, you see the street I lived in, and we just organized with some neighbors. We wrote like a form to the municipality, and we got 6 parking spaces, which are the ones you see here. And then we did like a kind of street festival with free waffles, books, stuff to play, stuff to paint. And then also I moved to another place, and there we also, with the collective Degrowth in Action, we organized something similar with a clothes swap where you could bring clothes. So it's quite an easy way to engage, and you can do it in every town and every village. You just have to kind of coordinate with some friends and maybe with some administration, and can be a way of engaging people that wouldn't usually join maybe climate actions. As you can see, we have a lot of young population also coming to our action there. Yeah, that was kind of one day, and mobility and the question of who owns the streets, whose street are they, is something that I'm also motivated. So I joined like cycling activism for quite some years. I'm not sure if you heard about the critical mass. On the left, you see a picture of the critical mass Barcelona, where basically people once a month with bikes take the streets. They are the traffic. There's very playful way. There's music, people have fun. It's an evening activity. And you cycle through the city without a leader, without a clear goal. Sometimes it ends with a nice kind of party afterwards, but it's basically to show these are our streets as the people who move on them. And this is a recent movement that works quite slick because the same principle is the critical mass. This is less regular. I think in many cities it's just once a year. You can probably find if where the next bigger city is where this takes place. And the critical mass, as the name says, kids are the center of the protest, and they're kind of accompanied by adults. I don't have children, but I just always went as a volunteer. They always need some adults to kind of protect against the cars. And it's also a very fun, playful, joyful way. Like the Barcelona critical mass has the slogan 0% emissions, 100% emotions. And that's true. It's very emotional and nice. And something more regularly that I attended as a volunteer as well is the BCVOS. It's another movement which basically wants to go with children to school in a safe way. It has different names in different countries. So maybe it's worth kind of searching for different terms. And there's also, I think, a global map where you can find them. Or reach out to me if you want to find them, because it's a nice way of kind of before whatever you do in your day, you can accompany children to school and do it as a kind of protest. Because yeah, it can be a small group from 10 people, but also up to 100 and something, depends on the BC bus in your region. Yeah, and that's something I did very regularly the last year. Another obviously pillar, I think both of you as you're active in activism know how important educational work is, like reaching out, explaining, informing, raising awareness. So something I've done is multiplier training with this organization, Stay Grounded. They give you the tools, the knowledge about how the aviation industry is linked to kind of climate injustices. And there with them, for example, then you kind of become part of a multiplier pool. And there I gave a training in a university in Madrid where we were invited as kind of facilitators on the link of aviation and climate justice. Another educational seminar I organized was the Peace Week with SCI Catalonia. Some of you were there or have been involved in similar projects where we kind of try to work on the link of migration and the climate emergency, but also to see how the capitalist system, how racism, how anti-feminism kind of construct a very destructive way of the society that we're in. And we try to kind of link these different topics with an international group of participants. Yeah, I just, as you see, it's very fragmented what I did, but there was always something going on in the city. And I think what Patrick already pointed out, be attentive to what's happening in your place. Look at the posters, look at the stickers, look what the people around talk, be part of groups. And that's how I, starting with Extinction Rebellion and Degrowth in Action, which were two groups I was kind of somehow related to, we ended up being in Fossil Occupy Barcelona and occupied the Autonomous University of Barcelona in May 2023, last year. And we demanded 3 demands, which were then met, which was a great success of like kind of divesting and mainstreaming education on climate science, which was one of our kind of demands, that every student, it doesn't matter what they study, should have a course on climate and kind of the social conflict, all consequences it has. So yeah, that was something we camped, I think 10 days, but I'm not really sure. It was definitely a long time. And we stayed at the university and did educational program. I was part of the program team. So we tried to organize like a movie screening, an expert who came and gave some talks. Yeah, and that, as you can see, maybe probably also like a shift towards more non-normative ways like occupation. And then here in the Netherlands, where I'm currently based, there's this A12 protest, which is a part of the highway, which regularly gets blocked. There was a time where it was monthly, then there was a time when it was weekly, and then there was a time where they daily blocked the highway last autumn. I wasn't in the Netherlands until like then, but it's starting again because the demands haven't been met and the government has been changed. But yeah, that's a protest I'm part of, but obviously it's these kind of forms, they can be very disruptive in a way, but if you don't feel like you want to be in such a close contact with repression authorities, there's also so many ways to support these actions, which doesn't require to face the police in such a strong way, which is to be in the care finger, to be a well-being person, to be in the legal team. So it's, if you kind of like these, but you don't see yourself, still maybe try go there or try to get in touch with the people organizing. They'll definitely be happy about any helping hand. Doesn't matter which role you want to take over, and all these roles are important. Yeah, and then what I mentioned, the camp this weekend that I found through also this camps link that I shared, but also through mobilizing here in the networks, was like by a coalition called Geef Tegengas, which is a Dutch new network, but then also if you want to participate in similar actions in different countries, it has different names, who are kind of the ones organizing this in Germany, Gelände, which are organizing also an action in September, and Code Rouge, Code Road in Belgium, who are also organizing a civil disobedience action against the fossil fuel industry and aviation sector in October. So for all these, I think what I can say is keep our eyes open. It's a bit what you said, when you get in there, you find the people, and then also the information reaches you. But if you don't have this information yet, don't hesitate to ask, I guess, any of us to give us this information, and we can share what we know, because we are maybe a bit already in there. Yeah, and then what I also just want to mention is that besides activism, or that's a blurry line, but besides activism, also the way you work or the way what you study can be ways to be active and do activism, basically. So I decided to do a master's focusing on the economic system and sustainability, climate justice. And then now I'm working at the University of Amsterdam as a PhD student on climate activism. And one of my studies is basically about the topic of today, which is how can you get active? And I interviewed people who recently joined climate activism. And we found that these kind of two topics that Erwan and Patrick already pointed out are like at the core of like finding your people and finding your place. And these kind of two things connect you with each other. And if you find your place, it's easier to find your people. And if you have your people, it's easier to find your role. And that's something that came out of my interviews. If one of the people who listen to the recording are going to start activism after, like in the next weeks, feel free to reach out to me and also do an interview. I can pay you €15. Yeah, it will enrich my findings. The previous findings we already have is a bit also on like different needs, what you want to, like if you join a movement, what do you want? You want to be related with others, you want to feel like you have an idea of what you're doing, and you want to be autonomous in a way. And that's kind of one aspect we were looked at in my studies. And the other one is on like what's hard. And I think you've lived through it yourself. It's sometimes you have other commitments in life. Sometimes there's some social issues of being new and you don't know who are these people. You might feel like the new kid in school who doesn't know anyone. And then like having a lot of different platforms and links and other financial barriers can be barriers. Yeah, that's very brief what I work on. Here are the links I mentioned, but also feel free to reach out to me at any moment. I'm happy to chat always about activism. Yeah, and that's it. I want to stop sharing, but I don't know how. Yeah, here I can. Good. Yeah, that's a bit of a short run through what I did and what I work on now. We think about how to get into activism, but we should also think of how to stay active in a sustainable way, and not to destroy ourselves and not to burn ourselves out. And I think that's something we as fellow activists should have an eye on each other. And from the beginning on, try to kind of think of your own boundaries and when it's too much and when it's a good level. And I think that's maybe nice to kind of have in the back of your head when you start, of like, I can take my time, I can take my breaks, and I can take my steps back as well whenever I need them.